are the key players within a state electricity market? Do you know them? That's what I'll be telling you about in this episode of Energy Explained, where we're looking at state electricity markets. My name is Olajumoke Delano, energy lawyer and consultant. I've spent the last 1 year traveling to different states in Nigeria, setting up and helping to build state electricity markets. So who are the key players within a state electricity market? The first is the State Ministry of Energy. Now, not all states have a state ministry of energy. So not all states call them state ministry of energy. Some people call them the state ministry of power and utilities. Some states call them the state ministry of power. Some call them ministry of energy and mineral resources. So they're different names, but ideally, there should be a ministry that is responsible for energy within the state, because energy plays such an important role in the development of a state, in catalyzing economic development because of the linkage between energy and economic development of a state. And so there should be a state ministry of energy. The State Ministry of Energy is responsible for policy, determining the overall direction that the state is going in terms of energy. The commissioner that sits atop this agency reports directly to the governor and is a member of the cabinet, the state executive council, a member of the governor's cabinet, and has direct access to the governor and can bring day-to-day reports on what is happening in terms of the energy plan of the state, report that to the governor. So that's the Ministry of Energy. And on a close next position, of course, is the State Electricity Regulatory Commission. The State Electricity Regulatory Commission can also be called by different names. We've seen them being called State Electricity Regulatory Authorities, State Electricity Regulatory Boards. So it doesn't really matter the name, but there must be an agency of the state government that is responsible for regulation, for licensing, for supervision, for ensuring that the market is being developed in an orderly way, ensuring important that this state electricity regulatory authority is also responsible for ensuring there is customer protection, issuing orders, issuing regulations, issuing tariff methodologies. The State Electricity Regulatory Authority has those powers. So we've mentioned the State Ministry of Power or Energy. We've mentioned the State Electricity Regulatory Authority, which is the regulator. And then we have the State Electrification Agency. Previously, they used to be called the Rural Electrification Board of the states, but many states are coming to find out that even within the urban areas, you don't have energy on demand, even within some of the urban or peri-urban areas. And so states are now calling these entities state electrification agencies as opposed to rural electrification or urban electrification. The state electrification entity is responsible, for running with the electrification plan of the state. There are also within the State Electrification Authority funds that are deployed for ensuring that the state meets its electrification goals. Now, this state electrification agency is sometimes managed under the Ministry of Energy, but not always, the case. So these are three major players, within, on the government side, within the state. Apart from these major players on the government side, there are also private sector players such as the power generation companies that are responsible for generating power. In our previous episodes, we talked about the energy access gaps, the energy deficit, and how off-grid solutions, states can attract power generating companies to come and close those energy access gaps within the states. So power generation companies who are licensed by the State Electricity Regulatory Authority or Commission are also key players because they bring new generation into the state, and this generation can meet the supply of the state and also meet the supply of other states. Then there's also transmission companies The national transmission company is owned by the government, but it's left to states to determine how they want their transmission companies. Do they want people to come and invest in transmission assets? What kind of ownership structures are they pursuing? Will those transmission assets be owned by the investors, or there are arrangements where it will be a public-private arrangement? So there are different dynamics that are possible within this space. But transmission companies are responsible for investing and maintaining the assets, ensuring that the assets are able to support reliable transmission of electricity across them. So transmission companies are also very important players, even in the dynamics of state electricity markets. What about electricity trading? Electricity traders are those that buy and sell, buy in bulk from the generation companies and sell. They sell to distribution companies or sell to large power users. Those are, the trading companies, and they also play a big role, within the state electricity markets. And then the distribution companies. Distribution companies, many people are used to, because these distribution companies are the ones that sell electricity to the end user. We are seeing a new dynamic emerge where there's a separation between a distribution company and a retailer, electricity retailer. And so the traditional distribution companies that exist in Nigeria carry out the function of both wheeling of electricity. Wheeling of electricity means taking electricity from transmission company and delivering it to the end user. But they also sell, they also buy the energy and sell the energy. They buy the energy from the generation companies and sell them to the consumers. We are seeing, a situation where these two roles are being separated, so that a distribution company, in some states, they have developed models that allow distribution companies to carry out primarily, solely, the function of wheeling electricity from one point to the other, while other companies are now responsible for buying electricity either from the GenCos, generation companies, or from the traders, and then selling it to the end users like you and me. So the distribution companies will be the wheeling, those who transport the electricity at voltages that can be used within my household, your household. And then they have the retail and the supply companies who now buy the energy in bulk and retail it to end users. There are also those called the independent system operator. Now, an independent system operator would become necessary within a state when there is now generation. There's generation that is coming up within the state, and multiple generations. Maybe there are different generators supplying energy to different places within the state. You would need a system operator, or even there are generation companies that are coming up within the states that are going to sell energy, maybe partly to the state, partly to the national grid. You will need a system operator to ensure that things are done properly and safely, and that energy is able to be moved from one part to the other in a safe and a sustainable manner. What about meter manufacturers? Meter manufacturers also play a very key role, because the meter is the equipment that you use to measure the consumption of your electricity, and also for payment also. Interestingly, meters are not only used by consumers. Meters are also used all across the value chain, from generation to transmission to distribution, to end users. So end users use meters and meters. So that equipment, that meter, when you put in your token of the electricity units you've bought, it registers it and continues to run down as you consume the electricity. So it's an equipment for transparency, but all across the value chain, even between the generation companies and the distribution company, between the transmission company and the distribution company, between the generation company and the transmission company, there are meters, in order to ensure that nobody is being cheated, and to ensure that the energy that you receive is actually what you're paying for. So meter manufacturers play a very important role for end use customers, large power users, even for distribution companies. Distribution companies have boundary meters where they measure the energy that comes into their network. There's another important set of players called the mini grid developers. A mini grid developer is a generator that is connected even directly to a distribution network. And it can be a standalone, or which is an isolated mini grid, or one that is connected to a distribution network. So these mini grids under the national program, they were up to 1 megawatt in terms of size. But we are seeing, other states that are permitting mini grids to go to 3 megawatts or even 5 megawatts. So there's quite a lot of dynamism that is entering, the market. And mini grid developers usually are able to set up and run within 18 months to 24 months and, shorten the time frame, for closing energy access gaps, though they're definitely not as big as independent power producers, power generators. But they play a critical role. In fact, I wrote an article calling them the middle child of the power sector, because they are in between in terms of size. The solar home systems, which are standalone and smaller, and the power producers, which are the power generators. Last but not least are the captive power generators, those that produce power for their personal use. So within all these different players, everybody has the role that they're playing. And coordination is extremely important as the market develops to ensure that there is no chaos. Imagine that you have a dance partner, but nobody knows the steps. What will happen? Everybody will be stepping on each other's toes. And so the State Electricity Regulatory Commission has the enviable and very important role of ensuring that all these players, they play their own roles without encroaching, without stepping on other people's toes, ensures that there is order. And this orderliness is required if you are to develop a state electricity market. Have you learned something new? Let me know in the comments section. Do subscribe and share this video until I come your way again with another episode of Energy Explained, looking at state electricity markets. My name is Olajumoke Delano.